Jake Evans, man, I am excited to have you here. How are you doing, man?
I'm great, man. Beautiful fall day here on KSU's campus. It's a pleasure to be here today.
You really can't complain. You talk about a fall day. The weather could not be more perfect. We recently had the storm come through, but what do you do? Now, Jake, typically I have, like a process where I take you through like a little nicety. Let's kind of get to know you. But man, you have got something urgently needing to be expressed. And this is the C4 nonprofit that you have started. Can you give me a little bit about the name of that and what you're trying to address?
Absolutely. So the name of it's Trailblazer Rising Inc. And our goal and mission is to make sure the future generations don't go woke. If you look at it, we are raising the most progressive, liberal generation in American history. Data is overwhelming. 7 out of 10 young people now believe government's the answer to problems. Only 17% of folks think patriotism is a good thing. And that starts here, Will. That starts on college campuses. These are indoctrination mills, in my opinion. And so we want to start where the core problem is beginning. And folks like you and me coming out here and talking to the students here as a way to shift it back towards the conservative values that make America great.
Jake, you're exactly right in pinpointing that data, but man, you've got more than data. You've got experience, you've got conversations. When you were running for the 6th District Congress, man, you were knocking on doors. What were some of the stories that you would hear?
Yeah. Man, there were so many. I'll never forget. I knocked on one gentleman's door, and he came out and he told my wife and I a story that I told a lot on the campaign trail. And he told me he had raised two people. One person was in private school, or actually homeschooled, and he raised her up through his value system. And then the second, who was younger, who came through the public school system, and he said the contrast could not be more stark. This person lived in Forsyth County. He said the younger person doesn't believe in meritocracy, is far more likely to believe in entitlement, is far less likely to work hard and embrace the values that made America the greatest country on earth. And so through that, I began to see we have got to make sure stories like that do not continue to happen. And we've got to bring more people into the conservative fold. We lean conservatives overwhelmingly 55 and above. That's a big problem and a problem I'm going to try to fix.
Yeah, man, you've got to start figuring out ways to bring young individuals over, onto the conservative side. Funny story. When I first started getting involved in terms of politics, I went to my first GOP meeting. And I'll tell you, Jake, the very first thing that I noticed, it was a sea of white hair in front of me. No offense to you old folks now, no offense. But I am just saying we have got to get young people onto the conservative ideology. And that is what you're trying to address.
That's
So,
right.
Jake, I want to know, how are you going to go about that?
Yeah. Well, it's a number of different ways. First, starting on college campuses, we got the Trailblazer Ambassador Initiative, which is bringing ambassadors at schools, at the collegiate level, at the high school level, at the middle school level, but also getting parents involved. I think the way that our children should be learning their values is through the nuclear family, the old-fashioned way, through what mom and dad said, grandpa and grandma said. And so we want to make sure that those folks are engaged, involved in their children's lives, because that's going to help us continue to, number one, make sure that the nuclear family is not being deconstructed, and then number two, make sure the values are being passed down the way they need to be.
Jake, I'm really glad you actually brought up the nuclear family. I had a recent interaction with a teacher here at KSU. Okay, in all honesty, right? She brought up the family style of the nuclear family versus the family style of the modern family. Now, the thing is, Jake, and you understand this. This is education, right? The way that she phrased it was not nuclear family style, but the strict father
Oh,
family
man.
style, the strict father family style.
Oh,
Now, you've got to understand context matters.
yeah.
And when you have teachers presenting this kind of context, when you're trying to convey one thing, the nuclear family, but you're contextualizing it in such a way, the strict father,
Hmm.
words mean things.
Yep.
So this is what your organization aims to talk about, to bring forward to the public. And this is why parents urgently need to start understanding that this is something that needs
Yeah.
addressing, right?
Yeah, no, that story right there will hit spot on why we've got to have this organization. We've got to have involvement at all levels. Number one, what's happening is they're misrepresenting realities. The reality is nuclear family is a husband and a wife and then children. But what they're doing is they're creating, in my opinion, these anti-American ideologies that are attacking the values, the past of the country that has created the best human experience of our civilization. And so we have to counteract that, because if you don't have any critical analysis. If no one else is bringing in a perspective different than that perspective, then our youth are going to be adopting it wholeheartedly, and we've got to break back and fight against it.
Absolutely, Jake. There's another story, man. I'm just chock full of stories. Again, giving the reason why this is urgently needing to be addressed. We have a college Republican who was in a classroom, and she was basically told, like, "Hey, we're going to do a last exercise. You can either write a paper or you can do a lesson plan. This is a teaching degree, okay?" So, she chose to do a writing thing about pro-life. Well, the teacher wouldn't let her do it. Wouldn't let her do the pro-life thing, right? So she had to pick up something else. Well, day of the actual assignment, turns out there was an individual that was actually allowed. Let me go back a second. Couldn't do pro-life because it was sexual content, right? So now we go back to the day of finishing up the semester, and then you're presenting your thing. This kid did a lesson plan of pre-K through 4th grade on sexual education, sexual trans help, and sexual trans acceptance. The teacher allowed that to happen, but didn't allow the pro-life to happen. And what do you got to say about that?
Well, that's exactly it. And I remember when I was in college years ago, I wrote a paper. It was based upon free market principles. Submitted it, got a B, which to me was problematic. I want to get an A, and I went and talked to the professor. I said, what can I do to get better? And he said, well, first, your paper was based upon fundamentally false assumptions. And I said, what is that? And he said, we need more government intervention. We can't have unembraced capitalism in this world, and therefore your premise underlying your paper was flawed, even though that has created the strongest economic power that our world has ever seen. And so that's exactly right, Will. Kids want to do well in school, but whenever you can only do well by professing one ideology, that is a tremendous problem that we've got to have awareness of at the parental level, at the college level, high school level, and we're doing that.
Well, in these last moment, Jakes, I want you to address the camera, but of course, as we know, beyond the camera, there is a group of people watching. I want you to address them and tell them why your organization is going to fix this, why it's going to address this, and why it's going to bring all of this forward.
Yeah, well, great. Well, first, Will, thanks for inviting me. It's been a pleasure to join Will today, but we need you involved. We need the young people involved at the middle school, high school, collegiate level. Our country truly is on the line right now. If we do not fight back against the gross indoctrination of our children, if we don't have parents involved, then we're going to lose this country. So trailblazer.org, 1R in rising, trailblazerrising.org. Would love to have you guys get involved. Thank you guys so much.
All right, Jake. Well, let's just continue the walk and enjoy the day, man.
Absolutely.